Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Chamisa. We begin today in southern Africa, where Zimbabwe is awaiting the results of its landmark elections, with both frontrunners saying they are confident of winning the polls. President Mnangagwa says he has received extremely positive information, but opposition leader Nelson Chamisa says his party is winning resoundingly. Zimbabwe is electing a new president, parliament and local councils. Monday's vote, the first since long-serving ruler Robert Mugabe was ousted, attracted a high turnout of 75%.
Confident that there was no rigging, and we would like to assure the Zimbabwean people that we as the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission will not steal their choice of leaders. We will not subvert their will. Whatever it is that comes out in our results is exactly what they decided in polling. The atmosphere has remained peaceful throughout the country without any major incidents, and I would like to congratulate my fellow Zimbabweans for achieving that.
Giving you life, yeah.
Our correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, is in Harare and she joins us live on Network Africa. Amarachi, what is the mood like in Harare a day after the elections?
Tokwe, expectations are still high concerning these elections. People are still looking forward to change in Zimbabwe. Most of those people I've spoken to this day after the elections, they've been talking about how they want the economy to improve, how they want to have more jobs, how they want to have more money in their pockets. They talk about a better life, they want education. Of course, there's a health system to think about because Zimbabwe relies mostly on international aid. So the expectations are still high. Doesn't matter who it is that becomes president, most people just want things to improve.
Have the electoral observers said anything about the conduct of yesterday's polls?
Well, I did speak to a member of the African Union Election Observation Mission here in Harare. There was a joint meeting of all the international observation missions who are covering this election, who are observing the conduct of the elections. And they said the general feeling was that elections started on time. Most polling stations opened on time. They did notice long queues in some and shorter queues in others. They said there was enough female representation in the polling officers at the polls. There was attention paid to the elderly. There was attention paid to those who were physically challenged. There were toilets, there were bathrooms. You know, there was assistance for anyone who needed assistance during the elections. They said many people came out to vote. A lot of people came out very early in the morning to vote. Later on in the day, they noticed a decrease in the number of people who came out to vote. But the general feeling really is that the elections were conducted freely and fairly. They commended the Zimbabwean Election Commission, saying that they did quite a good job conducting these elections.
So what about the presidential candidates? It seems both of the frontrunners are confident of victory in this election.
But both political candidates, the presidential candidates, are still very confident of winning these elections. If you speak to many people here in Harare, the opposition is their favorites, Mr. Nelson Chamisa of the MDC Alliance. They feel that he will do a better job. They feel that maybe because he's a lot younger than Mr. Mnangagwa, he probably will come in with more experience, more modernization, more modern ideology, you know, for Zimbabweans. They feel that education will improve. They feel that the economy will be better. Many of them say they're suffering under this economy. Was a bad choice, introducing the dollar, which they said was probably a bit too strong for the Zimbabwean economy. But, you know, if you go outside of Harare to the rural areas, many people there are rooting for the ZANU-PF, so we hear. We don't quite understand if that is as a result of fear or really that Mnangagwa is a favorite. But we have heard that before the elections, though, there was a lot of anxiety. But the general feeling really is of freedom, of the fact that people are able to vote without any fear, that things are about to change generally. Okay.
Our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, thanks for joining us on the program. In the meantime, Zimbabwean pastor Evan Mawarire, who led the #ThisFlag social media protest in 2016, has lost his bid to become a councillor in the capital, Harare. Mr. Mawarire, who was a popular activist over the economic situation and was Mr. Buhari was a popular activist over the economic situation under former President Robert Mugabe. In a show of sportsmanship, he congratulated his opponent, Jacob Mafumi of the MDC Alliance, on his win of the Mount Pleasant Ward 17 council seat. Mr. Mawarire had faced charges of treason, which were later dropped, for leading protests against the country's economic woes and corruption. He contested for the election as an independent under a coalition called People's Own Choice. In West Africa, as votes continue to be counted in Mali's presidential election, the spokesperson for President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta is claiming victory despite no official results being announced. Earlier on, the government said Sunday's vote had been disrupted by violence at about a fifth of all the polling stations. No votes could be cast at all in about 3% of polling stations in areas where Islamist militants operate. The official result of the election is expected later today, though there are speculations that a runoff is inevitable.
Malian incumbent President Ibrahim Keïta's spokesman, Mahamadou Camara, says the president was substantially in the lead according to provisional count, hinting that he could win the election on the first round.
I'm not giving any results. I'm only saying what the general tendency is, and it is a neat and wide advance for Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, which could enable a victory as soon as the first round. However, we are still waiting official results.
A disputed result could stir up tensions. Main opposition party candidate Soumaïla Cissé maintains that the poll will go on to a runoff, but if not, they would contest contradictory results and demand a recount.
We are now able to tell you that there will be a second round for this presidential election between Soumaïla Cissé and Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. We are indeed heading towards a second round. What does this mean? This means that the presidential sides aim to win in the first round by knockout, or said in the Bambara national language, has failed.
The Ministry of Territorial Administration figures show that of the roughly 23,000 polling stations that were meant to open, over 4,000 were disrupted by armed attacks or other violence. In most of Mali, the vote was peaceful and relatively well organized. The United Nations is heaping pressure on all sides to accept the result, or at least contest it through legal channels to avert a political crisis that would only add to the security woes the country is already facing.